Welcome to CEO Perspective. I'm Dick Clark. I'm your host. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. One of the icons of Florida dating back to 1958, even before Disney, is a organization and a facility and a center which has changed the world and continues to change the world. And obviously, you know I'm talking about NASA's Kennedy Space Center. We are so privileged to have the newly appointed director, Janet Petro, with us today. She is the 11th director of the Kennedy Space Center, but she's also the first woman to be the director. She was the deputy director, and she has a very impressive background, and you're going to learn about that right after this. So stay with us and look forward to talking to the new director of the Kennedy Space Center. We'll be right back. Let me first of all congratulate the new director, Janet Petro. I am thrilled that you were there. I'm thrilled that you served as a deputy director, and that Senator, now the head of NASA, Bill Nelson, made the decision to make you the director. A great decision, and you bring a tremendous depth of knowledge and experience that we'll talk about. But I did a little research preparing for today. And as many people know, I've had the privilege to work at the Kennedy Space Center many years ago. It seems like it was yesterday, but it was a long time ago. But one of the things that's very interesting, Janet, that I learned about you is that this wasn't a job that you just applied for in your normal course of your career development. Can you take us back to when you were in school and your father and his role? I thought that was fascinating when I learned about that.
Hey, sure, Dick. And let me say thank you and good afternoon. And I really appreciate you having me here this afternoon. So I'll start by saying I am a native Floridian. I'm very, very proud to have grown up here on the Space Coast of Florida. I was actually born in Michigan, but my father brought our entire family down to the Space Coast in the very early days of the space program. So you mentioned in 1958, Kennedy became a center, or NASA got instilled as an agency, and then Kennedy officially became a center back in, I think it was 62. But at any rate, he actually worked on all the test programs leading up to Apollo. So the Mercury, the Gemini, and then, of course, through the Apollo program and then on to the shuttle. So I consider myself the second generation in my family to have worked out on the Space Coast. And so what did that mean to me? I mean, I can very vividly recall sitting in my family room watching on that black and white TV, Neil Armstrong taking his first steps on the moon. And I saw how hard my father worked, how many long hours. It was very inspiring to me at the time to really kind of think about space, you know, even as I was growing up and going through elementary, junior high, and high school. And I'll note that my children and now my grandchildren are now going to the same elementary, junior high, and high school that I went to. So it's really a kind of a cool family tradition, if you will.
Unbelievable. And you have been to, even before you started work at Kennedy, you must have been to, I don't know how many launches. And for people that have not been at Banana Creek or the Saturn V Center, it's just something you can never explain to somebody what that feels like or what it looks like when you actually see the orbiter leave the pad. So it's quite something. But
Yeah.
what was also interesting is that your career didn't start with NASA, but you're a graduate of an organization which didn't have a lot of women in that organization at the time either. But talk about where you graduated from. That's a very prestigious organization.
Yeah, sure. I like to I like to tease my old boss that I went to the number one leadership school in the nation, and that would be West Point. And so, yeah, just a little bit, in high school, I wasn't sure, college in those days wasn't a given. My father worked. My mother was a homemaker, didn't have a lot of money. So I applied and was accepted to be in the second class of women. And really the big
Hmm.
draw for me was the fact that they had a lot of sports. They considered the whole person. That was very motivating for me to want to go there. And so I joined and ultimately graduated with the second class of women. And that was, that could be a whole nother segment on stories
Certainly
and things
good.
of that nature. But I would say that's where I really came into, becoming an adult. A lot of my foundational values were built during that time. So, leadership concepts like teamwork, how to work together with a team. We had a saying, cooperate and graduate. And so I was one of many, and we really had to help each other's out in order to succeed, whether it was, going through a field exercise or, getting the laundry to the upperclassmen on time. We really had to work together. The other thing I'll just say about that is some of my personal core values remain duty, honor, country. And of course, though, that is the motto of West Point. And it was General MacArthur in his final farewell address at West Point. He talked a lot about those three words. And I have, as I've gone through the journey of my life, and as I've went through the military and then private industry, and now here at NASA, those three values have served me well. And I'll just say a few words about it, if you don't mind.
Please,
Duty.
I was going to ask you anyway.
Yeah, duty. It's really doing what you say you're going to do, being dependable. So if doing your job and always excelling to do and doing the best at your job. Don't ever disappoint somebody. Let them know. And so again, whether it was on the field of battle or in a training exercise, or it's your boss who needs a report. Or the values that I really imposed on my kids. Just do what you say you're going to do. Have that sense of fulfilling the things, the commitments that you have made. That I think that's one of my core values. And then honor, of course, that goes hand in hand with integrity. And I really think that one of the things that you learn early on, and that you continue to learn as you go through your life's journey, is honor. If you break somebody's trust by say something behind their back, you don't deal with them directly, you're not truthful, or you don't tell the whole truth about a situation, that is very difficult to build back that trust in order to have a great personal or professional relationship with your colleagues. And then country, again, in the military, it's all about the United States of America. For me, country is having an understanding and a passion for things that are bigger than yourself. So not maybe the physical boundaries of a country, but something bigger than you, whether it's your community, the organization that you're working in, the team that you're working with, having an understanding and an appreciation for others and for things that are bigger and beyond yourself. And those values have served me well. And it's some of the things that we try to impart to the younger generation, if you will, who've grown up in different times.
And we're going to come back to that later. But one of my clients has a framed expression on the wall, is that you can't deposit excuses.
Yep.
And you talked a lot about excuses. But there's one thing I want people to know about is that you just didn't graduate from West Point, but you actually went in combat and you were a helicopter pilot, if I remember correctly from my research.
Yeah, I was actually not in combat, and in fact, that's a whole nother podcast because at the time, so this was back in the mid '80s. At the time, women were not allowed in combat positions,
Hmm.
and so I flew. I went to aviation school at Fort Rucker, learned to fly helicopters. I was deployed to Germany. Which you recall back then, the wall was still up, and so there was a very divided Europe at the time. But we women were not allowed to be in those combat positions. And of course, today that's very different. But that was my experience. It was great. I loved every minute of flying. I loved every minute of being over in Europe, and I took advantage of the opportunity of traveling that whole countryside.
Just an amazing background, and you are, of course, you have been at Kennedy as a deputy director. A little different responsibilities when you're deputy director. And I do, at that point, I do want to thank Jim Jennings, who was the deputy director when I worked with him and a number of the key staff in the old headquarters building. But Jim has been very, very helpful with our CEO roundtable. I talk with him every week, and I think I was the only non-employee of NASA that gave a tribute to him at his retirement. So I think the world of him, and I see him every week, and so you can imagine how long ago we've known each other. But there's a lot of stuff, a lot of things happening at NASA. We know about all of the private sector efforts that have been going on. You can't turn on the television without hearing about what's going on Mars. And so there's a lot of things that are coming up before the end of the year. And just let me insert that you did an unbelievable job dealing with the pandemic at KSC. I read up on that, and it was just amazing how you organized everyone and the success of how work continued, even though some parts were closed down, the visitor center and others, but the work continued every day. And that was all under your management. So congratulations on that. But let's get back to what's happening. I heard about the Artemis mission, which is incredible. I'll always know him as Senator Bill Nelson because I knew him when he was in that capacity.
Yep.
But the size of that compared to all of the previous orbiters is unbelievable. Can you talk a little bit about what that project is and
Sure.
how it differs from all the others, and what is its mission?
Sure, and I'll reflect back on. I'm the second generation at this very historic moment in NASA's history. The first being the Apollo program. The second is Artemis, and of course, Artemis is the sister of Apollo. And so
Right.
that's why the name was chosen. And this Artemis program will be returning us to the moon. And we say the first woman and the first person of color will be going back to the moon during this Artemis program. So broad strokes will be going to the moon, and then of course our ultimate destination is going on to explore deep space at Mars. But the Artemis program itself, if you can imagine thinking about, you got to get, if we're going back to the moon and we're going to go back there and we're going to in a sustainable way so we can build on the technologies that are needed for us to explore deeper into space in Mars, then we've got to get crew up there, we've got to get cargo up there. And so the Artemis program is all about getting crew and cargo back to the moon. And so there's a gateway element that'll be in lunar, an outpost being lunar orbit around there. We have several different contracts that we're enacting and employing with our commercial partners so that they can use their own capabilities to bring cargo and experiments and technology to the moon. And then, of course, the Artemis program itself. And I got to tell you, I'm so excited. Today, in the vertical assembly building, which is that big iconic building on Kennedy Space Center property, the first Artemis one is being built up. So we have the huge orange core stage, the 2 solid rockets already there, a couple interstage adapters, and second stage, interim cryo propellant system. And then on top of that is going to be the Orion capsule, which is going to be where the crew get into to be brought into deep space. So Artemis 1 is the first test flight. It will be uncrewed. Artemis 2 will be with the crew and it'll go around the moon. And then Artemis 3 is where we're looking to actually put boots back on the surface of. As I will just say, as you can imagine, the whole Artemis program has a lot of commercial space in it. We rely on their capabilities as well as our international partners and their capabilities. It takes everyone to get us back to achieve the mission that we're envisioning on Artemis. You mentioned how big it is. So Artemis is a Saturn-class rocket. It will be the largest rocket ever. I dare say that the entire east coast of Florida will be able to feel it when that thing launches. I think it's as tall, we like to say, as tall as the Statue of Liberty. So you can imagine putting the Statue of Liberty in orbit. And our ground systems program here is responsible for all of the development and operations of the ground systems and the infrastructure to launch that vehicle and then to go recover the Orion capsule, which will be falling into the ocean off the coast of San Diego out on the west coast of our nation. So it's a huge, huge program, a lot of effort by a lot of different teams across the agency to get us, our nation, continue to be leaders in space and get us back to the surface of the moon.
The senator made a joke at the news conference that you better get earplugs
Yep.
because the most amazing thing when you're watching a launch as well, you see it first, but you don't hear anything. And then there's a ripple, depending upon what pad it came from. And I do know there's been a difference in the A and B pads, but you see the flames and everything, but you hear nothing. And all of a sudden, this sound that just consumes you, and that was for the normal shuttle program. I can't imagine. I think I don't have the number, but the thrust was like 8. I think I wrote it down. It was 8.8 million or something.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's probably going to shake all the way down here in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
But it's just so. How are you partnering? I know that NASA was one of the few places that you could launch from, and even back in my day, we knew that there would be multiple sites that could launch spacecraft into outer space. So that's changed NASA's role, but it's not lessened NASA's importance in its partnerships with the private sector. So can you talk a little bit about how NASA, and particularly KSC, is partnering with the private sector? A lot of them are doing their work in other states and other parts of the country, but you still have a very important partnership with the private companies that are starting to put their own spacecraft up into space.
Sure. And I'll start with going back a decade. So the final shuttle launch was in July of 2011. And we at KSC knew that, the space shuttle program dominated our landscape. We were solely government owned, operated, only NASA programs were running things at the center, if you will. And we had established a vision to be that multi-user spaceport, and so that we could accommodate not just government programs and uses, but to enable the commercial industry and accommodate their launch and processing operations on our process. So we undertook a huge strategic process. We had our vision of the multi-user spaceport. We developed a strategy and actions of what we needed to do in order to get to that. And so we use the existing authorities that we've been given under NASA. And today, a decade later, if you came out to the center, you would not recognize the place. So we have, all the big. I'll just say a couple of the big names. We've got the Blue Origins, the SpaceX, the Lockheeds, the Boeings, and we started with our facilities and our assets that we said we're no longer going to need, and rather than demolish them or let them rust, we wanted to divest of those assets, but not diminish the capability. That was our overarching theme. So we divest without diminish. So we put out an announcement, asked if there was commercial entities interested in using those facilities and assets. We had a huge outpouring, as you see on our landscape today. And then after facility and assets, we looked at land. And then for our land, we wanted to outgrant or lease land to those commercial space companies so that they could take advantage of not only our geographic location here on the space coast of Florida, but also the existing capabilities that we already had here, the propellants, the buffer areas, the weather systems, all targeting at making launching from this planet a lot easier to do than if you were starting off in a greenfield. And I can't leave that without talking a little bit about our business processes and our operational processes, right? So when you're the government, you're the big dog in town, and you're only telling and downward directing, that's not a very conducive environment for commercial partners to come and operate on. So we purposefully and thoughtfully and strategically took a look at all of our operational processes and our business processes and said, how can we minimize the bureaucracy on our commercial partners? And so philosophically, we have tried to take ourselves out of the middle so that a commercial space company that's operating on our property, it's just like it's not on NASA property. We've taken a look at our safety requirements. As you can imagine, with the end of the space shuttle program, there were volumes of safety requirements that had grown up over the 30 years and was necessary for that program. But we took a look at them and minimized it and had a dedicated commercial such that we weren't putting our requirements on top of already existing ocean requirements, and allowed them to operate much more efficiently. I could go on and on, but I think a lot of times that's lost in the story of the transformation from that government only operating processes to where we are today. The dedicated, vigilant look at our processes and seeing how we could change so that we were making the commercial spaceport, their experiences, the commercial companies on our property, the most efficient and effective. Because as you know, they have their own technologies, their own innovations, and left to those innovations without trying to put our bureaucracy on it has really reaped a lot of rewards for us, not just here at Kennedy as on the multi-user spaceport, but you see that in our programs. If you look at Commercial Crew program, where we don't own the hardware, we NASA do not own or operate the hardware. We have SpaceX and Boeing. They own, operate, and we just buy a service, deliver our astronauts to the space station, and then that's how they get paid, by delivering those services. Obviously, we have deep insight into their processes, but not the oversight when it's government designed, developed, operated. And so it's really paid dividends for us in the agency, and we're pretty proud of that.
Well, it's like a dream come true when you go back to the days when I was there, when I had one of the people I worked with, in addition to Jim Jennings, was Jan Heiser. And we talked about a public-private partnership, building a life science center. And all of those were dreams. The fact that what was Kennedy going to become after the shuttle program ended. And you all made it happen. And I'm so proud that they made the highway named after Roy Bridges, who was the center director when I was there. And Jan is retired, and as Jim has. But NASA is as important and significant and relevant today as it always has been. Janet, you and I could talk for hours, but the important thing is you bring such a rich culture to that organization at a time when things are going to change dramatically. You're the perfect person to lead that organization, and we're so proud that you took the time to be here today, this afternoon, and talk to our people. And hopefully we can have you come back and talk another time. So thank you so much for spending time with us. And I'm sure everybody listening can't wait to go up and see. In fact, as you said, I probably wouldn't I probably get lost just trying to find my way to the VAB.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, it's got the largest American flag ever, unless that's changed since I was
Nope,
there.
it's
So,
still there. Yeah.
so, but anyway, Janet, thank you so much, and all of your staff that helped us put this program together. And I know that people learned a lot, and I hope it will inspire young people, which is one of your goals,
Yep.
to pursue a career in this, because these are life changing. And the final note that I'll say before I let you go is that climate change is also a role that NASA is playing. And that's something we have to be concerned about, because we see a lot of bad signs going on with melting and fires and temperatures and the like. So NASA's involved in a lot more things than people realize. So Janet, thank you so much for being here. And I know that people are going to enjoy watching this show. So thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Dick. My pleasure.
Well, I don't know what to say. Uh, NASA is such an important organization, and it's one of those organizations that always thought outside the box, but it also was flexible enough to be able to change with the times and never lose its focus or its mission or its passion. And it's still as relevant as ever. And you're going to continue to hear a lot of great things, even before the end of this year. And keep your eye on Janet Petro, the new director, because she's going to do great things. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And remember, every Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, CEO Perspective talks to somebody about what they're doing that's changing the way we live. You have a great afternoon, and thank you for being here.